Let's talk about housing. I know there's a Senate committee that will be grilling the RBA on Friday as well, and we look forward to that because the cost of living is number one. But let's talk housing because that is number one in that category, if not number two at the moment. The premiers are going to meet with the Prime Minister. This needs to be more than just a talk fest. What can they get done reasonably when they have this meeting? What can be done in the short term, Jane Hume?
I'm actually astounded that it's taken this long to have a national cabinet that addresses the issue of housing. I know that rent caps and renters' rights are the top of the agenda, but how about opening up supply of housing? Because we know that supply really sits with the responsibility of the states. So when you've got wall-to-wall Labor premiers across mainland Australia, surely you don't need a national cabinet for this. Anthony Albanese should be able to pick up the phone to whoever it is, Chris Minns, Dan Andrews, and say, hey, listen, how can we get rid of this problem? How can we work together to address this problem? I was down in Victoria, in Balan, in the Shire of Moorabool, and they were telling me that there were 18,000 houses ready to go, just waiting for state government tick-off from their centralised planning authority. 18,000. Now, if you cannot open up this supply, that is going to mean that the housing crisis that Australians are facing, whether it be renters, whether it be buyers, whether it be current mortgage holders, is going to continue. That is the only way to sustainably bring down the price of housing generally, is to open up supply. Why has this not been done before? Why does it take a national cabinet? It could even be done at the Labor Party National Conference, for goodness sakes. They'll all be there. They're all mates, apparently.
You could pass the housing bill too.
The Housing Affordable Australia Future Fund only deals with social housing. Let's be very, very clear. And it is a flawed policy. And it's a flawed policy because it's borrowed $10 billion. It's going to cost about $500 million a year just to service. And it's only the returns on that $10 billion that would ever be invested in social housing. If the Future Fund doesn't make a return, there is no guarantee that any money will go into social housing. So not a guarantee of even a single social housing, one single social housing policy built. You know, we've already seen $2 billion that magically appeared after the budget, already allocated to social housing by the Albanese government. Now, we did some questioning at the Cost of Living Committee last week about that social housing $2 billion that's been set aside to be distributed to states. Yeah. Apparently, even though it has to be expended over the next 2 years, the state governments don't have to tell us how many houses. They don't have to tell us whether they've completed building social housing with that money that they've been given. There is actually no compulsion for them to be accountable for how they spend that $2 billion. That's outrageous.